So like the title of the video says, I'm going to be covering Vauban and his rework. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the builds that I have currently for him. I have a Vortex variant, which basically has a little bit of duration, a lot of efficiency, a ton of range, just a ton of range, and very low strength. And then the more general purpose setup, and that's Bastille, where we have good duration, okay efficiency, good range, and good strength. So we don't really have any weaknesses, but we're not like really dumping everything into one stat. Over here under Bastille, or under our Exilus mod, we could throw Cunning on here to get some range instead of Strength. I chose to go with Strength because of the two things that we're using it for is going to be Strength related. Additionally, on this current setup, I have the Tesla Bank. I'm obviously going to be replacing this with something else when I'm using it, but for the purposes of this test, we'll kind of see how this works. So Tesla Bank modifies our first ability, our Tesla Grenades, effectively, to deal the damage around them in an AoE that they have absorbed. So when you throw them, they attach to an enemy. When you shoot them, they absorb a bunch of damage. When that enemy dies, they pulse damage around them. Now, this isn't actually super effective. Let's equip a single target weapon here, and we'll just see kind of how effective this becomes. So we're going to do level 100 heavy gunners for this test, and just kind of see how it works out. So if I charge up all four, I throw them, they can jump onto the same enemy like they have, and I'm going to just shoot the enemy with Vaza. Now watch the other allies. See, do you see the damage that was dealt? It was only about, what is that, like a sixth of their health? So I'll go ahead and kill him as well. They jump onto a new enemy. And you can always know that your Teslas are on something because there'll be like a little green effect on them. But you'll also notice that we're not getting a whole lot of AoE out of this. So when I end up killing something, let's go ahead and reset these. Throw them on the front one here. So notice that 940s, the amount of damage being transferred is as electric damage, and when you're in armor situations, it's just not going to be useful. It just won't be. Now, I think these will be a little bit more useful for like shielded enemies that run shields like Corpus. That being said, a lot of those are flying, and the balls are probably going to have a hard time grasping them. This will be a little bit better for infested as well, because the enemies tend to run at you and group up, and armor isn't as prevalent in that type of enemy. So, in general, the augment for your Teslas is going to be terrible versus Grenier. Versus the other factions, it's kind of okay. So we can go ahead and test this as well. We're going to just drop in a bunch of, I don't know, let's do some basic enemies, some chargers. So we'll throw in some chargers into the simulation. I think they'll be down to the left. Yep. Alright, so well, some of them are following me anyway. Let's go ahead and reset them. So throw them here. They all attach. Now you see that this thing died instantly. So as long as enemies don't have a lot of armor, these are going to be pretty cool. They're going to work very well. But whenever you run into armor, they effectively are useless with this augment. They still are good CC in any case. So they're all dead. So just keep that in mind when using the augment or building around the augment. Now, that pretty much covers what Tesla is. I think this is a great change. It brings them forward into, 2019, 2020, when they're not just, spamming laser wires everywhere. The Tesla change is very, very good. The second ability, Mind Layer, not so much. So, a couple of these abilities are actually really cool and really good. And they have interesting kind of dynamics that each one of them holds. Some of them are just completely useless though. So what we're going to do is we're going to kill off all those enemies, and we're going to simulate them again. And keep in mind right now I am using my general build, my Bastille general build. I do have Tesla Bank on, so we could improve a little bit on one of our ability strengths here, but it's not a big deal. So we're going to go over Mine Layer now. So we have Flechette Orb, Vector Pad, Overdriver, and Tether Coil. First of all, let's use Tether Coil. So Tether Coil is actually really cool. It only grabs 2 enemies at a time, but man, does it grab them. This will grab pretty much any enemy. I've seen it pull enemies out of bubbles. I don't know if that's intended or not. It will pull any sort of enemy like disruptors, like ancient disruptors and stuff that are supposed to resist abilities. It just yanks them like anything else. So this is sort of going to be your budget kind of ghetto discount version of Vortex. It only affects a couple of enemies at a time. However, you can throw out quite a few of them, and you can pull enemies. So, while it is a budget version of Vortex, it can be very effective if you're willing to throw them out. One additional note is if you're using it in a infested scenario, and most of your enemies are getting pulled, but you're having problems with disruptors walking in and stuff, you can always throw down Tether coils, I'm sorry, in a closer range, and the second the disruptors hit those, they'll get sucked in like anything else. So it's really nice to actually kind of supplement Tether Coil with Vortex. So moving on, that was a simple skill. I think it's good and it's strong. Flechette Orb. This is just, it's booty. It's not good. So I'm going to go ahead and throw, these aren't super clustered or anything, but I'm going to go ahead and throw down a Flechette Orb here. And we'll just see it in all of its glory. So this thing fires off rounds randomly, as you can tell, and it's not good. It just is so ineffective. It's very unreliable, and that's not what you want in Warframe. You want reliability. If I throw down a couple of these, we can start seeing numbers eventually. The damage is just not that impressive. It's really, really terrible. These things need to probably just be changed to, instead of shooting bullets, dealing an AoE around them and making the sound effect sound like it's shooting bullets, to be honest with you, because this is horrible. Just from a practical level, you'd have to increase these things' damage by like 100,000% or like a crazy amount for them to actually be useful, considering how inconsistent they are. So that's it for Flechette Orbs. They're terrible. I would not recommend using them. Now we have kind of a fun skill. We have Vector Pad, and there's a couple interesting things that talk about it. It does seem to scale with a number of stats. You can get a very decent boost with them. You cannot stack them. So if I throw down another one... Oh, I'm out of energy. Let me pop back up here for a second. You cannot stack the movement bonus. So even if I throw 2, it doesn't throw me off any further. So just keep that in mind. You're not going to be able to hyper boost across the map or anything. Another really interesting aspect is if you move the wrong way, they don't affect you. They only affect you if you move the direction they're pointing. So the second I tapped back, they shot me forward. So it's an interesting thing. It's a ground lock skill, so its usefulness is numbered. If I turn on AI, we can also note that the enemy will be affected by these. So I'm going to go ahead and draw them over here. And notice they were not walking in the direction. So that directional requirement where you have to be running in the direction of the arrow is only true for players. It is not true for enemies. So you can use it to like reject enemies in certain points. I think honestly in the end that's going to be what it's used for, because as a player the third dimension is just too important. Jumping and positioning and stuff is going to be too important. So Just keep in mind that your tractor pads or whatever they're called are only going to be useful for deterring enemies. And as well, sometimes they're kind of hard to throw down. So like if I'm pointing in this direction and I throw it straight down, I can't even see which way it's pointing. Okay, so it's pointing back right. So you'll notice sometimes when you throw it and you're throwing it really close down, it'll point in random directions. So back right again. So that's one thing that's I don't really like about it. I think it should always be in the direction your camera's facing, maybe. But yeah, it might be because it's clipping through the floor, the animation. I'm not sure why it does it, but it's something that's important to keep tabs on. Finally, we have Overdriver. I love this. This is so good. It's just a general steroid for Vauban. It's incredibly... It just brings his power level up so high. So we can see with the Baza, I'm dealing 68s here. Oops. And 425 bleeds. 68s and 425 bleeds. So if I dunk myself here, I gain a 48% damage increase with this current build at least. So we can see I'm doing 100 damage now. Very respectable damage increase. You can see my dots are better now too. It's awesome. It's just really, really good. I love the fact that they did this. It's not going to be anything insane like a Chroma or some of the other buffs that you can have, but it is something, and it also is an addition to all of the other things he can do. This is one of his Mind Layer abilities, which is only one of his 4 abilities. Additionally, Mind Layer only costs 25 energy. So this is something a little different about the rework. They actually took the energy cost of his second ability down. So your first 2 abilities both cost 25, and then it jumps to 75. So just keep in mind, it's very easy to keep that buff up. It lasts a very long time, 40 seconds. It's not that hard to keep that up, and for a 50% damage increase, it's going to feel really good. So that pretty much covers it for Mind Layer. Overall, 2 really good abilities. One of them is situationally beneficial if you have grounded enemies running at a point that you're trying to defend. There's so many Warframes that are so much better than Tractor Pad though. Like, you would never use it in place of something else, or even Vortex or Bastille. It doesn't feel like it has a whole lot of place. I think if they were to make a change to it, they need to make it airborne. Like, when I throw that out, I create a ring in front of me, and it's like a little jump gate that when I jump through it launches me. I think that would be perfectly acceptable. But in any case, really positive changes to Mind Layer, more useful abilities than before, and a steroid is just too good. It's not too good compared to other things, but for Vauban, if you're a longtime Vauban player, it's huge. It's a really nice buff. Jumping into the new ability, Photon Strike. This is a really cool ability. One usability note for it is Photon Strike will be pulled to the center of your vortexes, so it will kind of auto-aim your Photon Strikes. And I'm going to actually not cover Photon Strike right this second. I would like to cover Bastille Vortex first. So let me go ahead and, I don't know, pull out 8 of these just so we can have something to test against. Ooh, let me pause the AI again. Alright, so going off into Bastille and Vortex, Bastille now trims armor. So I'm going to go ahead and throw down a Bastille. So you're going to notice they're going to lose armor, and at the top right, I'm gaining an armor buff. This is absolutely awesome. The speed at which you're trimming the armor is going to be relative to your ability strength. So you do want a decent amount of ability strength with this. You can't just run range and crush your strength stat. It's not going to work very well. That being said, Bastille is now going to be kind of a jack of all trades in terms of what you want skill-wise. You're going to want some power, or some strength. You're going to want some range. You're going to want some duration, and probably some efficiency so you can use it every so often. So I think a generalist approach to Bastille is probably the right way. Now we've stripped all of their armor. Let's go ahead and hit them with a Photon Strike. So just the damage of Photon Strike, the flat damage, is incredibly good. It scales with range, so that's something to keep in mind. However, if I come up and I simulate some more heavy gunners, I'm going to go ahead and use Vortex this time. I'm going to hold down Bastille and use Vortex. I'm going to hit him with a Photon Strike. Notice, the damage is not great. It does blast type damage, so unless an enemy is susceptible to that or something is heavily armored, it's much the same as your Tesla Nervos. You're going to need to be able to trim the armor. So I would say for Photon Strike, you're going to be needing to either use Bastille or know the enemy type you're going up against. So if you have Bastille, like I said before, trimming the armor, you don't even have to trim all the armor. Oops, I missed. You don't even have to trim all the armor. It does really good flat damage. I think this is a great positive change to all of these skills. I will say Vortex is a little bit more annoying to use now that you have to hold on to it, and I'll show you why here in a second. So if I'm in the air trying to do something, you do this big like cast animation now, and it can actually make you overshoot your target sometimes. So I don't really like all of the animation changes. I think some of them are just too big, too flashy, and they actually take time in the air. So yeah, it'll actually hold you in the air for a little bit longer and move you forward. Not a great animation change, but overall the complexity of Vauban's gone up a little bit. One final thing that I will say that I'm just incredibly impressed with is if you actually look at what they've done with Bastille and Vortex now share their same radius. Now it's 17.5 meters, which is very respectable right there, but this is also my Bastille, my generalist build. If I go over to my Vortex build and we look at the range on this thing, it becomes 28 meters. Now, it's hard to kind of imagine what that is, but what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and spawn some enemies right here. And then I'm going to throw a Vortex. So I'm just going to throw a Vortex in the middle. No surprise they all got pulled then. Not a big deal. And I'm going to wait for it to end. Should be only about 10 seconds. But the range increase on Vortex is just astronomical. It's so big. I can pull enemies to there. I mean, when you're on a map and you're seeing enemies get pulled before they're almost in AI range for them to shoot you, it's just incredibly good. So overall, I would say the changes to Vauban, the big stuff is Bastille can strip armor. That's going to be incredible for Vauban, and it's going to open up his build choices, his gun choices especially. You're going to be able to use crazy stuff like maybe kunai. So if I come in here and I kill and simulate, I have my my Vortex build on. Let me switch to my generalist build so I can actually strip armor better. Actually, let's not do that, just so we can see the strength difference on armor stripping. So I'm going to go ahead and throw out Bastille, and we're going to see, look at the top right, how slowly our armor is going up. Additionally, we're not getting as many enemies picked up. So yeah, you're going to want strength with the Bastille. I just wanted to showcase that real quick, and let's go ahead and change our builds. Coming up here, going to go over here, and this, again, like I said, is probably a swap out. I don't think the augment for Bastille or Vortex is really worth it. It used to kind of be worth it on like a low strength Bastille build, but since it trims armor now, I don't think that's the way you're going to want to play Bastille. So let's go ahead and throw this down again. So we're trimming all their armor. Notice how much faster we're getting the armor off and getting the armor buff. And then we can kind of kunai it up. And even like such a crappy weapon like kunai is able to just do work. Like, this is insane for such a low mastery weapon. I'm not 100% sure why these enemies aren't getting hit. There's like side profile or something. But yeah, it's really good. Additionally, when you use Bastille, it will always collapse into Vortex at the end. But you can hold it down. You can hold the ability down after a certain amount of time. Note that your armor does not get stripped if you're in Vortex. It only gets stripped when they're being lifted by Bastille. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse that, and then we can throw in our kunai. So yeah, even a crappy weapon like kunai with the explosive ordnance or whatever it's called, is going to be able to perform at high levels with this armor stripping. So that's pretty much all I have for Vauban right now. If you guys think I missed anything, or if there's comments that you guys have, or something that, you know, is very important that I would like to know, let me know in the comment section below. But that should do it for now. Thanks for watching.